So, good morning, everyone. Oh, that was loud. Sorry for that, friends. Did I wake you up now? We still have some lovely people in the line here, but respecting everybody's time and considering that I have a 4 hours presentation for you, I'm going to get started. So, thanks for joining. What exciting times we are. Challenging times, but can you imagine that us together have the opportunity to be leaders in such an incredibly important and defining time? I think there have been moments in history that has been more business as usual. This is not one of those times, and I think we can all sense it, and we could possibly sense it right when it comes to our own hope and courage. There are people, our friends, our communities that are in doubt today. There are leaders in doubt, and then there are people who are on the opposite side of the equation, and I think we are many in this room. The purpose of today is to take the next step when it comes to Action Speaks. Action Speaks responds to, I'm sure all of you have been in conversation this week and previous, where you sense that one of the big topics for us is not to debate whether climate change is an issue, whether it's possible, but actually, clock speed. How do we speed up things? And one of the initiatives is Action Speaks. It is about, first and foremost, to share best practices among peers, to show actually how it's possible. But it's also an opportunity to share hope for people who today believe that nothing is being done and it's not possible. And we have a lot of myths to be changed. One of my starkest examples recently, I met somebody, a third generation of an agriculture company in Germany making huge machines. I know nothing of them. We had a discussion about climate transformation, and she said, I wish our line of business that there was an opportunity for us to transform, but we're not going to be in the forefront because of our business incentives and the structure of our business. A few weeks later, I met somebody from a Canadian mining company who had went bananas in electrification. I thought it was fantastic and fascinating. So it turned out it was not a charity, it was not philanthropics, it was all good for business. So I connected them, and now recently I got an email from the lady from the agriculture saying we're going for it. So we are together in a pivotal moment of time where we need to change the perception, we need to be led by faith, but more and more, we need to muster our energy to bring together the examples of the good examples of how things are working. So we're going to lock the doors, and nobody's allowed to leave before you place your examples on the Action Speaks platform. I'm going to apologize. I'm going to get a little bit nerdy now, because when you speak to the successes of being climate smart, and you say that it's also business smart, people think that you're a visionary, if I would say it like that. And you actually have to share the examples, and you have to share the data and the numbers of the new world economy that we are actually heading towards. So I'm going to do that with you today. To start with, just 3 numbers that I bring from my friend Chris. Where are you? There. I was close. So very good. So 3 data points. That is, they are important, and they are IKEA data points, if you like, because we ask some 30,000 plus people in 30 plus markets. But they are very synonymous to when I speak to Johan Rockström, or when I speak to Marjorie from APCO this week. She has similar data points as well. So let's look at the first data point here. 68% of IKEA's customers out there worry about climate change, and there is no other worry they have that beats that number. The interesting point, it's a vast majority. This is not an unclear, this is a very clear signal to us. Another clarity with the number is that if you go to China, it's slightly higher. If you go to other parts of the world, it might be slightly lower. But the difference is not as big as people would like to think. Not at all. This is Texas. This is Sweden. This is France. This is Italy. This is China. This is all over. And one thing that is also all over is that when you travel down in age groups, the number gets up to 80s towards 90s. We better listen. Number 2, here's an interesting data point. A few years ago, people would say, I worry, but I don't know what to do. And as we see right now, the last data is that actually people are starting to taking action. And I think we could easily say when we speak to them, they would often say, I don't know if it matters, but it matters to me, and I will continue to make my decisions to select and deselect and try to contribute. And then the last point is also incredibly interesting. 6% of IKEA's customers say, this is important to me, but I'm not prepared to pay. Don't make the mistake to think they don't care. If you're a single mom in a big city in Europe or elsewhere today, 2 kids, so on, you don't have the money. So it's our job to make sure that if we want this transformation to be successful, we have to find the economic incentive to make that so. At IKEA, we're committed to Paris Agreement. We took partly a leap of faith, but we've been onto the journey before Paris, so we were a little bit prepared when it came. That means, obviously, for all of you in the room, understanding that it means scope 1, 2, 3. We are committed to minus 50% carbon by 2030, and then minus 90 by 2050. 3 reasons, and I want to put some gravity to these points, and I will soon tell you why. For us in IKEA, we see it as an ethical responsibility. Knowing what we know today, we are sad we didn't know this 25, 30 years ago. Knowing what we know today, we simply can't look ourselves in the mirror and pass this on to the next generation. It's our responsibility together with you to make a change. Secondly, the data I showed to you means if we're going to be relevant to our customers in the future, it wouldn't be smart from a brand perspective to neglect the data that is showing that people care. Third, and I will speak to how this is the new low-cost economy, because it is. We are transforming the economy right now in a way that we haven't seen in maybe 150 years, and that is true. Why are these 3 important? This is IKEA, but it's a lot of you in the room and a lot of companies who would subscribe to this, and many of you are here today. It is interesting today because when people now turn maybe even 180 degrees to things they would say or claim a year ago or so, you start to wonder what motivated them at the first time, right? A lot of companies like ourselves, we wouldn't change our values or our business model due to elections. With all the respect for political and democratic systems, that's not possible. We work in longer cycles, and we are actually dictated by these conditions. So how are we doing? This is, I've never been so proud of a number in my life. So we have grown our business by 24% since Paris Agreement, and we have reduced our carbon by 30%, 30.1% since that moment. I'm not looking for an applause. I'm not. I'm looking to share it because it's important, because if we can do it, anyone can do it. And note that the 30.1 is not relative. It is an absolute number, so it's compensating for the 24% and then 30 on top of that. Now I'm going to get nerdy, so hold on. I hope you can see, otherwise we're happy to share it. This is the scope 1, 2, 3 IKEA climate footprint. It looked sort of like that 10 years ago. We are on a converging and sharpening process. So the data, if you go back to 16, looks slightly different, but it's more or less that together with the SBTIs and the auditors out there, we're getting better at measuring and following. This is super interesting for a couple of reasons. So fiscal year 16 around Paris, first of all, this data takes away a lot of myths. When I ask people, they think transport is the biggest part of IKEA's climate footprint and whatnot. So this data tells us that number 1 in IKEA's footprint is raw materials, in product-related materials. Number 2, products used our customers using IKEA's products in life at home, typically those who require electricity. Then it continues production, customer travel, and home deliveries, people connecting with us on the retail side and so forth. The other important thing with this is, I think, you need to know your data. Otherwise, you're basically blindly trying to figure out things. So this is, after you commit to Paris, this is the next step, right? Start to get some sort of data in order so you know what you can act on. Let me show you how it looks today. So this is the journey, and it's so interesting, okay? One of the interesting things is there's no silver bullet to deliver the 30% reduction in IKEA, or I think in any business model. If we start by looking at materials, you see that, I'm going to click one more time, you will see the relative this is basically the percentages show the share, and this is the relative movement that we've seen over the years. So if I start at material, which is our biggest responsibility, we are like 11% down, and you might think that's not, of course, as good as the average even, but it is our most difficult part. And remember, we are selling 24% more to start with, and then we minus 11. We're selling 24% more, we minus 11. Okay? Is the pathway to stop consuming, degrowthing, and so on? No, not at all. The way to become sustainable is to re-engineer your value chain, and that's what we're on to. And by the way, we're incredibly hopeful that we will be able to continue on the material side, because the innovation has started to kick in. Circularity is still ahead of us, but the opportunity in that is going to be fascinating. Product use in home, what is that? Well, switch to LED lighting, smarter appliances, and water-saving filter, etc. The thing that started to kick that number really was when we realized we have to sell those products at a benefit to our customers so they save money. We started to charge more, and then we said, no, let's scale it, economy scale, and speed that up, and suddenly you see the data yourself. Then it continues. Integrated into the numbers here is massive investments in renewable energy, 4.2 billion euro, all of it being economically amazing. There will be things like reducing food waste by 57% and many, many more actions. But we know fairly well today, since we have our data, where our responsibility sits and how we can act. Here comes the most important thing today. Everything, I would say, from own operations and upstream. If I put the IKEA cost footprint on the screen, it's almost synonymous with our carbon footprint. Okay? So IKEA's cost today is 32% of our cost, total cost is material. If you look at production, it's 9%, and then so forth. Every time we touch carbon, we touch cost. Every time. Okay? Sometimes we do it by improvements, sometimes we do it by transformations and big investments. And when people say, isn't that difficult to say? Well, of course it is. That's what businesses do. We invest in order to drive benefits. So when we speak to the growth of IKEA, the 24%, please note that last year we made a record investment in affordability to make our products more affordable, more accessible to ordinary people, 2.2 billion euro. It was financed mostly from being good at climate. Isn't that fantastic? Can we please tell that story to people out there? So if I move on, let's see. I brought a couple of examples. We are working on launching a communication package here sometime around summer, and I brought a couple of just examples, because we also realized that it's difficult for people to connect with this unless you really share the examples. And when you share the examples, in the world we are in today, you really need to have your data right, because people will assume there is greenwashing going on, and there's so much skepticism on it. So this is a fascinating and difficult project. But the examples here on how it was possible is about renewable energy investments. It is about investments into plant-based food. It is about LED lighting. It is about electric vehicle home deliveries, solar on our rooftops. It is about taking back products. It is about Forest Stewardship Council, which is the way we act, or the measure of forestry in IKEA, where we are fully committed and implemented, which is economically good as well, and a lot of other things. We have about 40 stories that we want to tell that actually has contributed to this footprint. So what is the biggest risk? As we see it, it's silence. And this was relevant a few weeks ago, but it's even more relevant today. I think we need to muster our collective strength and individual strength to not show fear in this moment, because people need to hear these stories. The movement that we are onto is happening, and it's unstoppable, but we are short of time, so we don't have the time to have things pulling us in the wrong direction. Action Speaks is about 5 things. It is about, as much as it's important for us to re-energize ourselves with the why, Action Speaks is only about talking about the solutions and the how. It is about speed. It is about impact, which comes from knowing your data and addressing the right things. It is about another level of collaboration that we've never seen before. Right now, many of us have realized that it's not enough only to work among peers and value chains, but also together with governments. And finally, it is about making sure it's good business to be a good business and communicate. So therefore, we invite you, people you know, to this unbranded initiative to use the platform as an opportunity to share great examples of what really works. Through spreading it, we can help each other and our business communities to actually learn and speed up, but we can also help each other to spread more hope out there. And I think I will finalize with just say, I think it's an interesting time from a leadership perspective. I used to think that my role was about leading in our value chain, and I think it's not enough today. In a world with the crisis that we have today, I think each one of us needs to take a slightly bigger role in the community and contribute collectively to something better. And we need to take action. That's all. Here you have a QR code. It goes to the IKEA sales. No, it's not at all. It goes, no. It goes to the Action Speaks community. And please join us and let your friends know so they can join as well. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesper. My name is Peter Vanham. I'm editorial director at Fortune. I have the pleasure to guide you through the rest of this program this morning. Jesper, I want to thank you for your leadership, but I also want to thank you for being very real about this. Real both in a way that gives us hope that this can be done, but also real in a way that acknowledges reality. And I think that's something that's very important today. We have an amazing set of speakers that you'll hear from today about the business case for climate action, and I want to call them to the floor. I want to start with Andrew Forrest, who is the chairman of Fortescue. And I want to ask you, Andrew, to join us. I understand that you are the chairman of Fortescue, which is one of the largest mining companies in the world. Let us know if that's true. And that you have made the business case for climate action. And I think this is important for all of us to know and to hear. And also to know about how you make the business case for climate action. Because of course mining, as we all know, is both incredibly important, but also one of those hard to abate sectors when it comes to decarbonization. So I'd like to ask you to come to the floor today, now, and tell us about your business case for climate action. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you. I've got one of these. Oh.
So none of you guys have to actually be here on stage. You're doing it for your love of humanity and for the love of your planet. So I just want to say, thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me. I'm a scientist. I know a little bit about engineering and a fair bit about what motivates people. And I put out to the companies, about 25,000 of us, that I wanted to stop burning all fossil fuel. And it was met with a fair bit of humor because we burn around 1 billion litres of diesel a year. And then I asked, how are we going to do it if you guys take control of the company? If this is you in charge, you're now the chairman, how do we stop burning fossil fuel? And there's more of a shift. And then I said to my entire company, actually, we are going to stop burning fossil fuel. And then I went into the operations centres, and there are these big operations rooms. There's railway lines, and there's ports, and there's these massive building sites, and there's engineering construction sites, and they're all controlled from these ops rooms. And I let people know that at around the end of year 2028, I was going to come into those operations rooms, look at the energy feed systems, and any which had any fossil fuel input, I was going to switch off. And that was met with a little bit of incredulity and questions like, you mean you're going to shut this site? I said, yeah, it's going to go dark. And they said, what about all the people? And I said, that's going to be your responsibility. You've got to have worked this out. I mean, we don't want to lay all these people off, but you're going to sort it out. And we now have systems in place. We're spending around $6.2, $6.5 billion, and the workforce has figured out how we're going to stop burning fossil fuel. And it's just a little message that people are really on your side. If you release people in their inventiveness and a sense of urgency, such as you're seeing from IKEA, and a sense of love for humanity, that you're motivated by saving this planet. And I've got to tell you, climate doesn't care what happens in your schizophrenic White House. Climate doesn't care about the fact I get challenged on Bloomberg that it's a lot easier to just stick with oil and gas. The climate signals are really awful. I mean, we are releasing more carbon dioxide than we ever have in history. Our temperatures are rising more than they ever have in history. We're supposedly doing something about it. And I'm saying, why is this not happening? Why are we not biting in? Why is there 2009, $100 billion committed? It'll never be paid in COP. Why is there another $350 billion promised in Baku? It'll never be delivered. Why are we relying on philanthropy? And the reason is, ladies and gentlemen, is that it's not underpinned by a business model. Unless it's underpinned by a business model, doesn't matter which regime you belong to, what economics you subscribe to, humanity's got to survive. And it needs a business model. And that's the key. Stopping burning fossil fuel is actually good business. My major argument to people is that if you look really hard, like Pierre is in IKEA, leading the world, then you're going to find solutions. We have found solutions for shipping. It's simply ammonia. The International Maritime Organization is saying we need a carbon tax on all shipping so that everyone goes to ammonia. It's not far away. It gives me huge hope. Railways. It's cheaper to run these railways on ammonia and electricity. And these are the heaviest trains in the world. Huge trucks with wheels bigger than this room are cheaper to run now on green electricity. We're working this out. Going real zero is what we call it, and real zero by 2030 we will achieve. And the numbers are good. Now, yes, we're getting a huge amount of pushback, but I want you to know that the people in this room, while the days seem dark and everyone seems against you and everyone's being really practical and doing the right thing by shareholders and their consumers, they're also committing bad business decisions long term. Burning fossil fuel has, of course, a huge existential cost. But when you add up the amount of fossil fuel, which you didn't have to burn, and that becomes an operating cost saving, and you amortize that or you multiply that, sorry to sound, as Pieter says, geeky, you multiply that by 10 years, you're going to find it's a very large amount of money, even in your household. That money, collectively, that volume of capital is called savings. And banks lend against those savings. And that becomes a fully financeable proposition. To really big companies in the room, to everyone, you multiply that by a huge amount of diesel consumption or oil consumption, gas consumption, whatever you like. That is an asset you can borrow against. Now, borrowing against something which is called net zero, like, is it carbon offsets? Is it carbon credits? Is it carbon sequestration? That's a myth. What is that? We're not sure. Well, we can't finance against it, I'm sorry. But if you just say, we're going to stop burning fossil fuel by a date, I assure you, if you run a large business, the banks are going to take you super seriously. You have a financial model. You will stop the world destroying itself. Pieter, I just want to say thank you very much for your great leadership and thank you for having me in your forum.
Thank you, Andrew. And I think that is a message that we need to hear. It's a message that we need to hear because it drives it home for all of us. And also it makes it non-political. It makes the case for business and it makes the case for people. And we appreciate that. We also appreciate that because, of course, in your own country, I suppose, Australia, this is also a huge topic, both in terms of how important it is for people, but also how political it has become, I suppose. So we appreciate that common sense perspective. I want to invite now to the floor our next speaker, Sofia Corradi. Sofia, I had to look you up on LinkedIn. I couldn't immediately find you because your name on LinkedIn is Sofia Climate Injustice Corradi. Is that true? Which is absolutely fascinating. I should briefly introduce you and say you're an activist at the Arctic Base Camp, also here in Davos. Yes, so we can find you up the mountain, and you came down this morning. Thank you for doing that. And I want to ask you to provide a scientific perspective, the scientific case perhaps for climate action, or just your case for climate action. Welcome, Sofia.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm certain that what I have to share is not a novelty for many of you, because you are here, you are showing up. But still, those points are important for us to come from time to time in order to take action and urgent action. And as climate youth activist and scientist, I have to share some data first. We know that in 2024, our planet reached its highest temperatures since the last interglacial period. And I come from Brazil, and last year we experienced extreme fires, which left the air in my city and many others across the country barely breathable. And also we saw devastating flooding in the southern regions, affecting many livelihoods, including some of my friends. And these are just part of a compounding crisis of a warming planet due to human action. And according to the just released 2025 World Economic Forum Global Risk Report, extreme weather events are highly ranked, but they are identified especially by younger generations and civil society. So I think part of the society is still lacking urgent action to that, and this should include everyone. And as young people, we often ask if there is reason for hope, and I say yes, there is, because I'm also here, so I'm hopeful. And since I heard this for the first time, I try to share with others, because we are all activists. We have our own purposes, our company's purposes, and we should look this activism as a place for imagination. So we imagine the world or the business, we want to have it, and we take action towards that. And in this context, business have an essential role to play. But this goes, we all know that this goes beyond ESG slogans, which are increasingly being abandoned and forgotten. I have worked in a consultancy firm, and while we were building our own sustainability policy, we wanted to help our clients to find their own, which that must address the core of each business models and not just be empty reports or isolated actions. They are good, but we should address the core business. But for that, difficult decisions must be made. And sometimes prioritizing life and planetary health is incompatible with business as usual. Yet, the greatest business of all is preserving life itself. To business leaders today, I say embrace change, take good risks, and prioritize society and nature over short-term profit. Many of you will gather at COP30 later this year, and we are even seeing this becoming a business case for the tourist sector. I say as Brazilian youth, we don't want that. But for you here today, I ask, what new actions will you bring to my country and to the global community to leave a thriving world for future generations? We've lost so much already, but we still have so much left to restore. And I count on you. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we're going to move to our panel discussion. I want to invite our panelists to the stage, and we're going to have a conversation not just anymore about the business case for climate action or about the science case for climate action. We've heard that now, and thank you for sharing those very real examples that come not just from your science background, but also from your background of where you live and where your friends live. Thank you for that. I want to invite our panelists to the floor now. Melanie Nakagawa, the Chief Sustainability Officer of Microsoft, Bertrand Picard, the founder of Solar Impulse, and Lauren Dunford, the founder of Guidewheel. Welcome to all of you. Please be seated where you feel comfortable. Do we have only two mics? Okay, it's going to be interesting. Okay, so I want to do the following thing, which is I want to start by asking you all a couple of questions. We're going to talk about how to accelerate the business case for climate action. We're not going to make the business case for climate action. We're going to see how we can accelerate it. Okay, so that's the challenge that I have for all of the panelists. And by the way, we want to make this interactive, so I'm going to leave some space for questions at the end, and that's where I hope some of you can come in. But I also want to make sure that we start from reality, from the here and now. I want to do that, first of all, acknowledging it is still 8 o'clock in the morning. Well done, everyone, for showing up. I think we need to say that. I hope you're all caffeinated or have another source of energy. Everyone, thank you for being here. I have to say, you don't know this, the two of you, but Bertrand, I want to say thank you especially to you, because Bertrand, I pulled him over to the Belgian dinner last night. He stayed until the very end. Bertrand, you're smirking. And then, Bertrand actually stayed in Kloosters, so he had to find a way to get back to Kloosters and then to get back here barely 7 hours later. So well done to you, Bertrand. Now, of course, you've had bigger challenges than finding your way home from Davos to Kloosters, and I want to ask you about that. I think you flew in a balloon around the world, so maybe that was nothing to get to Kloosters yesterday night. But the reality, Melanie, I want to start with you because you are somebody who is at home here in Davos. You're at home in Seattle, but you've also been at home in Washington D.C. And I don't want to make this a doom and gloom conversation, rather the opposite. But I do want to acknowledge reality. We have seen on Monday somebody signing an executive order, I believe, to retreat the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement again. And we've also seen, and I think this is also important to acknowledge, that people who have made the business case for climate action sat right behind the president and applauded the president while he was basically making the opposite case, saying literally drill baby drill, and saying that he's going to recarbonize the world. And I just want to acknowledge that. And I want to ask you to give us perhaps your perspective, having worked in DC, in the White House, and also starting from the point of view that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Satya Nadella was the only big tech CEO who was not sitting right behind the president. And so while we've made the case, the business case for climate action, and we understand that from Andrew and from others here, it is good business to take climate action. I wonder, is it still good business when there is a very powerful administration telling you, I'm not going to do that, and watch out if you are?
Thank you so much for that question, and thank you all for being here up and early. So I love this question because one of the things that I thought Jesper did a great job framing was many of our companies, particularly multinational companies, have enduring and durable strategies that don't span one election cycle or one administration. And this year, happy birthday to Microsoft, we turned 50 this year. And part of when we build businesses is how do you create a durable strategy that's enduring? And one of the things for Satya Nadella is climate change is a generational challenge that we must confront. And those companies that can do more should. And that really has been the fundamental mission and principle behind our commitment when we set our commitment back in 2020 to be a carbon negative, water positive, and zero waste business that protects ecosystems by 2030. We make CapEx investments and projections that go out that are multi-year. And then the other comment that I think is always interesting is when people ask me, what do you think about the election? I always ask which one. as a multinational company, as many of you who were here last year in Davos, the big topic last year in Davos was what we called the super cycle of elections that were sweeping the world. It was the most number of people were voting in democratic elections last year. That was the key topic. And these are elections that we watch closely across, whether it was Japan or Korea, what's happening in Canada, France, Mexico, which has a climate scientist now leading their country, Europe, and the new commission that's taking seat. So I think this is the other key piece for companies that have durable and enduring strategies. It's really focusing on staying the course. What's the durable strategy? Because there are elections that happen all over the world and that have really meaningful impact for businesses.
Melanie, do you see hope from those other elections? Because from where I'm sitting, I see a lot of other countries who are actually following that pathway of the United States and choosing for leaders who are climate skeptics again. Who are choosing for options that are not geared towards faster, accelerating climate action.
So I guess I would challenge that, because when I think about what's happening in Europe with the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSDDD, the Due Diligence Directive, and others.
It's too early to play the game of
I know,
acronyms.
Exactly. So I was trying to spell out the entire directive. These are things that all corporates, multinational businesses are all going to have to respond to. California passed a disclosure legislation that we also have to submit into. So I think that's the other key piece to highlight is there are, and then it's not just Europe that's moving regulations on corporate disclosures. We're seeing this happen in other parts of the world as well. And that's, again, what is a durable strategy for businesses is to always be scanning their horizon. Where is corporate compliance coming into play? Where is the importance of transparency? Where is the importance of staying the course? We've made a decadal investment, and then we've also made an investment to remove all of the carbon since our founding in 1975 by 2050, which is making us one of the largest purchasers of carbon removal on the market today.
And congratulations on that. And I think you have shown that leadership with Microsoft. Now, of course, many other companies have made commitments too, and many other companies, not perhaps for political reasons, in the past 2 years, have come back from those commitments. We've seen that with any type of company, really, but I suppose also with tech companies, because what we've seen I understand from tech companies is that a huge increase of energy uses come from AI, data warehousing, etc. And so when you've seen that, can you tell us a little bit about the delta that this has brought about for Microsoft, how it has affected your climate action plans, and how you've been able to stay the course and accelerate climate action at Microsoft?
This is a great topic, and I love that this is about action speaks and scaling. So I think this is a fantastic story of scaling. I work at Microsoft. I joined about 2 years ago, and there's a team at Microsoft that was there when the first...
You were here in Davos on your first week on the job.
That's correct. There's a team still at Microsoft that negotiated the first 50 megawatt power purchase agreement for clean energy a few years ago. And when we think about scaling, I'm happy to say that last year we negotiated the first, then largest corporate power purchase agreement for 10.5 gigawatts. And so when you think about scaling...
This should be easy math, but it is still early. So basically, we're talking about which scale, and this is 20-fold increase?
I think that's right. But... this is where, I love to talk about where businesses are scaling. I loved Jesper's slide of seeing all the numbers of, where the declines are happening, but we know what the math is. And the math is we want to make sure we're bringing on more clean power to the grids where AI is scaling. We're trying to ensure as much of that can be carbon-free as possible, and we're going to pay our way in each of those. So one example is just as much as you're seeing the energy needs of AI coming into the mix, you're also seeing companies like ours negotiating some of the largest power purchase agreements ever before in history, 10.5 gigawatts in a single PPA. You're also seeing really...
That's for the use of Microsoft warehouses, or is that...
for data centers.
Yep.
And then you're also...
Data warehouses, I should say, of course. I don't suppose you have big warehouses.
So you see scaling that's happening there. You're seeing scaling happening on low carbon materials, so we can build these differently with cross-laminated timber, taking out some of the steel and concrete that's needed in the build of these. So that's the other key piece, is to really highlight where you see that scaling. The very sort of noteworthy announcement last year about bringing back online 3 Mile Island, which was the unit that was shut down for economic purposes.
I learned about 3 Mile. Does everybody here know 3 Mile Island? Could you just raise your hands if you know 3 Mile Island? So that's about, a little over half. I have to say, here in Europe, I think we know places like Chernobyl, but 3 Mile Island is a little bit sort of the I can't say the Chernobyl of the US, but it is a nuclear site that was shut down because there was a nuclear scare 40 years ago. Is that right? Did I get that right?
But there were 2 units. One was shut down, and then the other was shut down years after for economic purposes, and that's the unit we're bringing back online. That's 800 megawatts of carbon-free power coming back into the grid of the Pennsylvania market where AI growth is happening. Yep. So this is sort of the topic of where do you see action happening, where do you see scale happening to meet the demands of AI. These are the kind of shots on goal that companies are taking, including like ours.
And so finally, it means that you have not changed your climate targets, and you are on track to meet them, is that right?
We've not changed our targets. We still have 5 years to hit the first round of them of carbon negativity. We're doing the math like Jesper. I took a picture of his slide. We have a similar slide like that. Ours is more of a waterfall chart. But it's an exciting time.
Which means that it's been going faster, or?
We're looking at, we're looking at where the interventions are that are going to help us hit the targets.
Okay. Love the images. And by the way, if you've noticed, I tried not to bring my phone on the stage. It's not because it's an Apple phone and you're from Microsoft, but because do you remember that interview of the BBC journalist with Elon Musk? Do you all remember that? And he had his phone, and then it felt sort of like he was a little bit ridiculed by Elon Musk for having done his preparation on his phone. Do you all remember it? Nobody remembers that. Anyway, so this is why I brought my notebook. I thought it looked more professional. But thank you, Melanie. I guess nobody's in on the joke yet. Bertrand, over to you. So, of course, the big question on everybody's mind, the elephant in the room, is: did you get home yesterday by balloon, or by car, or by train, or on foot?
Now let's focus on the real crucial topics.
Yeah.
I don't want to be rude, but I want to be clear. If we want to convince the people to change something in favor of the climate, that means a lot of people who are not in this room, because here we are already convinced, but there are a lot of people who are not convinced at all. What should we do? We should stop the wishful thinking. We should stop to tell to the world, you have to focus on long term and stop the short term. You have to stop to pollute. The last year was the hottest year in the world. Stop that. It doesn't work. Because these people don't care about that. These people care about short-term personal profit, advantage, election, and nothing else. It's very strange to imagine that some people can be like that, because it's exactly the opposite as what we are. We want to be good. We want to make a better quality of life. We want the happiness of people. We want health. We want quality of life. But many people don't care about that. People who deforest, people who pollute for their personal advantage. You tell them not to do it, they will answer, I have 10,000 salaries to pay at the end of the month. I have my stock options to get. I want to get money for my family. Well, they all have good reasons. But overall, it's a bad reason. So I don't think that the decarbonization speech works. If you speak of decarbonization, a majority of people, a majority of countries are going to say it's a handicap for our business. It's a sacrifice we have to do. It is less GDP. So let's turn it around. It's not a question of decarbonization, it's a question of modernization of the world. If our world is polluting and changing the climate today and putting CO2 in the atmosphere, it's because we are outdated. We are not modern. We are inefficient. We are using technologies that are used since 120 years at the beginning of the oil era. Thermal engines, 27% of yield. An electric motor is 97%. We have buildings that are badly insulated. We heat them with fuel instead of heat pumps. It's polluting, it's outdated, and it's expensive. So if we modernize our world, bring all the newest solutions, all the newest technologies, you've heard Andrew, you've heard Jesper, we have 1,800 of them at Solar Impulse Foundation. Change Now is also looking for solutions. We have these solutions. And then, when we speak about modernization, we will have an automatic decarbonization. It's the logical consequence of it. So we have to change all the narrative. We are not in a crisis, we're in an opportunity. It's not expensive, it's profitable. We are not protecting the world for the next generation. We are bringing business models for the current generation, for the people today who are going to make more money. And I take the data centers. We need data centers for AI and for a lot of things. We need to heat cities, otherwise people are going to be cold. Why do we use different energy to do both? You make the data centers, and then you have to cool them down, or put them in the polar circle to get them cooled. And on the other side, you have to use fossil fuel to heat the city. Well, you can have the data center working, and you use the same energy twice for heating a city. This is not for climate. It's for business. It's for money. You divide by 2 the cost of heating and data centers like this. Everything is like that. So I really think we have to change our narrative and explain also that it's not a cost, it's an investment. It is profitable. And, you know, if you do that, you are heard by the business world much more. Now, the problem is that you will maybe not be heard as well by the green activist. And here, we have to make a very psychological shift. We need to stop this cleavage between the green activists, who are very, very useful because they bring the spirit of what we have to do, and the industry who brings the solution. We have to stop this cleavage. We need both. But we need each one to speak to each other. If the green activists don't speak to the industry because they hate the industry who is supposed to be only polluting and don't see the solutions they can bring, it's not a dialogue. And if the industry says, we don't want to hear the ecologists because they are only handicapping our business, it won't work. So we see that it's very subtle, it's a psychological thing, it's human communication, and we really need to go in that direction. Otherwise, in 50 years, we will still be saying, last year was the hottest one on Earth.
Right.
This has to stop. It's not an argument that's convincing the business.
Bertrand, I think that the room went through a whole range of emotions during your speech, from nodding enthusiastically to sort of wondering, like, what am I hearing? So I'm going to ask you 2 follow-up questions. The one is maybe going to turn us a little bit back more in the need for some extra coffee and a fresh walk afterwards, and hopefully some inspiration. And the other one is just about inspiration. So the first one is going a little bit further in this direction that you've been going on, which is the challenge I think many of us here. Does that then also mean that for those of us who are more on the side of like climate action because of belief in climate change and worries about green, does it also mean then that we have to really put aside those ideological concerns that we have and reach over to people like Elon Musk, who on a political level has really, I think, made an evolution? Do we have to go that far that we have to say, you know what, as long as you modernize, as long as you bring new technologies, as long as you do that, you're welcome in this big tent? It is a big tent, by the way.
As long as you bring technologies and solutions that are economically profitable, that increase the quality of life of people, that reduce the amount of wasted energy, yes. We blame Trump for getting out of the Paris Agreement. Of course, I do it also. But the reality is what? The reality is that the offshore wind turbines are economically profitable. He's not going to shut them down. It's profitable. With solar in the southern part of the US, you make more money than with oil. He's not going to stop solar. Energy efficiency, it's the only way to be competitive now for the industry. With energy efficiency, you obtain more with less consumption of resources. He's not going to stop that.
Right.
Because he wants to do business for the US. So at the end, he will not be in the Paris Agreement, but he might do much more indirectly for the environment than a lot of countries who have signed the Paris Agreement and do nothing.
Right.
Because if he wants to do business, he's going to do that. And it's going to be good for the US. So,
Bertrand,
I care about climate change. But I noticed that this argument doesn't convince the others. That's what I want to say. I'm not just business-oriented. I'm finding the arguments to convince the one who don't think like me.
And keep it grounded. And there's not a standing ovation, but that doesn't matter. Jesper said earlier on, I don't want an ovation for what I did. Just look at at the facts and look at why we've done this and how we've been able to do this. I mean, it is true that we've seen that 68%, Jesper, where are you? 68% of people said, I worry about climate change of my customers over there. But only 6% were willing to pay for it. And so IKEA has been very pragmatical about that. We're not going to make it political, so I'm going to take a step back, and I don't know if there's alcohol for those who need it after your remarks, an Irish coffee or something. I'm afraid not. So I'll try to turn now to a more inspirational question for all of us, which is, you are also a real pioneer. You didn't like the joke about the balloon, but you are going to go again around the world soon with a hydrogen plane. So tell us a little bit about, the acceleration of climate action, because hydrogen is, I think, one of those examples where not everyone is yet convinced of the business case. It seems like you are. So tell us what makes you so convinced that we're going to see more of these technologies coming online and to such a degree that you might get on a plane again without fuel and try to go around the world in one time?
Yes, the present today is about the solutions that are already profitable. The future is about solutions that are not yet profitable for the environment. And hydrogen is not yet profitable. And this is why I'm interested in that as a pioneer. Hydrogen is at the same stage than mobile phones 40 years ago. It was a suitcase, $15,000, in order to make a phone call on a mobile system. And everybody thought it's impossible to make it popular because you will need to put antennas everywhere. Well, we have antennas everywhere and everybody has a mobile phone in his pocket. Why? Because we reached what is called the critical mass. The critical mass is when you have enough offer and enough demand to drop the price. It's exactly what happened with solar energy that was 40 times more expensive per kilowatt hour 25 years ago. Hydrogen will be the same, but we have to push the start. And for this, you need explorers and pioneers. And this is why I want to fly around the world on a hydrogen-powered airplane, non-stop, zero emission, around the world. The ultimate flight, you cannot do more. And just strike a little bit the spirit and say, look, we can do more than what we think. And of course, like for the mobile phones, like for the photovoltaic, there are people who say it's impossible. I'm just asking one thing. The people who think it's impossible should not disturb the one who are trying to do it.
But you've done this. I mean, like you've done things that people thought were impossible and I think put your life at risk, perhaps in some cases. Thank you, Bertrand, for that.
The life of the world is at risk. So it's not dangerous to take a risk to make it better.
Thank you, Bertrand. Thank you, yes, please. And thank you for giving us that real inspiration. I think we really needed it. I needed it after those earlier remarks. Lauren, I want to come to you. You tell us what you do. You work with companies to do exactly what we're discussing here today, which is to accelerate climate action. And so, we're trying to get real examples of how that's happening and how that will continue to happen and how we will make those targets for 2030, which scaringly is only 5 years away now. Tell us some examples of what you've seen work and what you expect to work more going forward.
Yeah, I love it. So we're going to get real, and it's going to be a lot less sexy than a flight around the world. It's going to be in the world of pelletized color concentrate. Who knows what pelletized color concentrate is? Okay. So if you look at Jesper's super inspiring slide and that decrease in the materials, carbon emission, we're going to drill deep into that first column, the big one. And that big one is made up of all of the suppliers and all of the materials within all of the amazing work that IKEA is doing. And I want to tell you the story of someone who really inspires me within that column. And again, deep within it, pelletized color concentrate you'll find in pretty much anything that's colored. So if you have sunglasses on and they're colored, or an iPhone case and it's colored, or you see a traffic cone and it's colored, that's pelletized color concentrate that's giving it color. So it's a piece within a lot of those suppliers. And the person I want you to think about is Bill Scalingo. He is VP of Operations across 7 plants globally, making pelletized color concentrate. He's sitting in Hatfield, Pennsylvania, and this is around 2 years ago, and he's looking at his operations, and he's saying, oh man, we have a growth goal as a company of 30% growth, top line, and I've got these plants that are telling me they are at capacity, running as hard as they can, and I've got a backlog of orders building up. And that's in some ways a good problem to have, but not 2 years ago, because getting new pieces of equipment into those plants and operational and hiring operators to run those machines, that took time. That's going to be a CapEx investment, super expensive. And so Bill said, I don't think I'm going to do that old way of doing things. I love the framing of not decarbonization, but modernization. He says, I wonder if there's a way that I could modernize my operation instead to hit that goal. And he looked within his operation and he said, I know that I tapped on bandwidth. This is a lean operation. I'm in charge of everything. So I've got a lot going on day to day. But who's the rising talent? Who's the star within my operation who might actually really love a project like this to be able to help us as a company hit our 30% top line goal, but do it in a way where we're saving money along the way and reducing carbon emissions? And in manufacturing, we've got a talent gap right now where there are new folks coming in who don't necessarily have the knowledge in their heads, folks retiring. And he looked at one of those new entrants to his team, Katrina, and he said, Katrina, figure this out. And so Katrina, and I love that example Jesper was sharing around how you look to the team to find those opportunities, or maybe this was Andrew. It's how do you empower the people in your organization with the challenge and the vision as a leader? And this is what I want to, or I would hope all of you are inspired to do coming out of this, and then let them figure out the how. Because it might be real different than you think. Because Katrina looked across those 7 plants. She said, okay, the traditional way to do this would be to buy new machines, I know that. But let me think non-traditionally. I've got hundreds of pieces of equipment. They're all different ages, makes, models. How the heck am I going to do this? And that's where she found Guidewheel. And what we do is we say, let's bring all that equipment into the modern era. Let's bridge it into the cloud with a different way of looking at how to connect it in, which is not through trying to tunnel into the machine brain if it has one, because a lot of these equipment pieces are 60, 70 years old. We're going to instead say, well, every piece of equipment uses power. And we can clip a sensor that's as simple as a smartwatch around that power going into each of their extruders and compressors and palletizers, all that different equipment, bring it into the cloud, and suddenly Katrina and Bill have a real-time pulse on when any machine, like a Fitbit tells you you're running or hiking or sleeping or deep sleep, REM sleep, what every machine is doing, exactly how fast it's running, when it's running, predictive indicators, getting ahead of failures, and of course, the emissions associated with that production because it's electricity. You've got suddenly the ability to drill into where is there opportunity to get that 30% growth. And at first, the operators on the plant floor said, we're at full capacity, we can't hit that. But when Katrina and Bill looked, sometimes those lines were running at 40, 45%, 50%, 30%. So they were able to pinpoint and not just achieve 30%, but 35% growth out of those existing assets across their plants. And at first the operator said, we don't believe it, but being able to look at that truth of what the machine was doing, equip the team to be guided to take those obvious things, like let's reduce our changeover time, let's have friendly competitions for who can produce more with less, let's get alerts before something breaks down or before there's a fire or before we're going to have a quality problem. It just made sense. It was just the more modern way to approach it. And then they bring in their first VP of sustainability who says, hey, now we can go to our customers And we can say you can pinpoint the exact emissions per unit of production associated with what you're buying. That modernization lens, and all it took was Bill saying, yeah, who on my team could lead this? And how can I ask my team to think differently about that challenge?
That's amazing. And that is, as you said in the beginning, real.
Real. Pelletized color concentrate. Yeah.
So I'm going to try to remember that. I think I already forgot the name, not the example. So maybe one final question for you, which is, now you've given one real example. If we zoom back out and we look at these 5 years ahead, and we know we have to start today, if not yesterday, what, in general terms, have you seen are some of the most promising areas, some of the most promising technologies to bring online to make it real for everybody?
Yeah. So I'll think first, when we think about promising technology, let's take that real example and let's think about what it means in the context of Jesper's column, which is, how's he going to get the next edge? And the neat thing about having the pulse of every machine within that 7-plant operation, the 300 plus manufacturers we work with, if we can get the pulse of every machine on the planet, being able to pinpoint where there can be more efficient equipment, to be able to have the data to finance that more efficient equipment, to be able to look across all those loads and say, where could we do demand response? Where can we have the intelligent grid, have the behind the meter visibility within each of those largest users on the grid to respond flexibly, integrate renewables, have the data to size solar before you oversize it. There's such promise in all of this decarbonization technology, thermal batteries, different types of powering those operations, that if we can have that web of AI recommending where that best CapEx investment is, where those right actions are, and helping guide the decisions to be made that are good for business and good for the planet, they are, I like how Jesper put it about no silver bullet. These are all the lead bullets. And well, what's the catch? It's that it's really hard. And if you can leverage the power of those data centers and the AI enabled by them to say, hey, here's the thing to do the hard analysis behind the scenes and pull in the right technology in the right place at the right time, that can take that column down at the pace and scale that we need across all of the 10 million factories on the planet.
That's amazing. Thank you. I was trying to think about the climate impact of silver versus lead, but I don't think we can figure that out today.
There's something there.
I'm gonna ask 3 final things, because we are coming up at the end of our breakfast, and I know you all need to go and take action on climate in about 10 minutes. So the 3 final things we're going to do. I'm going to let one person ask a question, a short question, and I'm going to hope that anyone here on the panel wants to respond. The second thing I'm going to do is ask to the person operating the video wall here if they can put back on the QR code that makes sure that we can all provide our feedback, join this movement, and make sure that we actually make this interactive and that we keep it going after this morning. And the third thing I'll do is I'll ask the 3 of you to come up with a final comment of only hope, Bertrand, of what can we do to motivate our colleagues, the people in the room, or anyone we work with, to make sure that they are both hopeful that they can do it, and that there is a way forward that they can actually contribute to climate action. I hope that's a clear question. So first, one question. Go ahead. Can we bring the microphone here? Thank you. I know I put a lot of weight on the one person asking a question. So, no pressure.
Hi, everyone. This is Esra from UN Office for Partnerships. You talked about 2025. We have 5 years to go to 2030. So my question to the panelists, with 5 years to go, we have 17 goals to meet, and one of them is climate action. How are you going to use your platform and position to push for climate action in concrete terms?
Thank you so much. Melanie, I'm going to choose you to answer that question.
Actually, it's a twofer. It's about sharing success stories. I think I learned recently that the human brain, because of evolution, tends to absorb the negative information more so than the positive, because you want to make sure that we're not going to harm ourselves. It's an evolutionary trait. And as a result, you have to increase the number of positive stories you tell to actually penetrate the media, the psyche, and really create that optimism. And so I'm really excited because there's been incredible progress in just the last 5 years. We're 5 years into our journey. We're seeing incredible progress when it comes to water. We've redesigned our new data centers to use zero water for cooling for the new AI data centers. Bertrand's example about using the waste heat, we're doing that in 2 data centers in the Nordics right now. So it's a great example that's already live and in action. There's examples with dynamic line rating where we're seeing AI be able to increase transmission capacity of clean energy. In the UK, they brought on 600 megawatts of more clean energy, and we're able to transmit 60% more clean energy on an existing transmission line using AI and dynamic line rating with National Grid. So I think what I get really excited about is how do we use our corporate platform and show examples of, in the last 5 years of our journey, what have we learned, what are the challenges we still need to overcome, but what's the progress that we've made that is shareable with other companies to join us. I think a lot of the conversations we hear today and over the next week is about how companies can collaborate, and what we're seeing is really interesting multi-sectoral collaborations. We've partnered with Google and Nucor, a steel company, to look at really interesting shots on goal for large-scale clean energy opportunities for our three companies. And I think this is a really exciting moment right now in time where, yes, there's 5 more years to go, but if I think about my time at the NSC, when I was on the presidential transition team, none of us thought that an invasion of Ukraine would be something that we'd be grappling with in that first year, or that Germany would no longer be on Russian gas. And so I see, I've had the privilege and an opportunity to see incredible change happen at a speed and scale that we've never, couldn't even imagine. We've seen a world where $2 trillion have moved into the clean energy market when we still thought $1 trillion was still years away. So I get really excited because if we don't look back enough to see how far we're going, you can really get pessimistic. And I think what I see is incredible moments of optimism because we are moving faster. We have to move even faster, but we've been able to prove that we can move faster and we have the tools to go faster.
Thank you. And by the way, thank you. And thank you for sharing that very briefly, but I know that you also have a report that you made about the actions that you just took in the last 2 years. Where can we find that?
Yes, so we just you hear a lot about AI and people saying, well, it's a thing in the future, right? This is something that's going to happen in the future, and it's a hopeful thing. And what's so interesting, again, from the ability of people to actually really understand what's happening today, we released a report last week that showcases since 2023, when we announced our AI playbook, all the innovations of AI being used today, what I call AI in the wild, that's having a material impact to accelerate sustainability progress. And I get really excited by it because it's just a bunch of case studies that showcase here how AI is being used to address something like water leaks. 25% of water is lost to leaks in developed countries a day. And so if you can use AI to help predict and better maintain those systems, you're going to address the clean water and sanitation target. So this report's available on our website.
We find Microsoft AI Green Solutions.
Accelerating.
We can't Google it. We can't do Google. We'll do Bing.
You can Bing search.
We'll do Bing. We'll Bing search it. I think you've also answered the question about how you can motivate your employees. So I want to thank you for that, Lauren. Very briefly, we're in Switzerland. We try to end on time, and I think I'd love to give a final word to Jesper as well to lead us out of here. So, to motivate others and our colleagues?
I love how Melanie said it around speed. So I think my contribution, I want to be to make it absolutely impossible not to do the things that are right for business and right for the planet, because those who are doing them are modernizing and are winning and are competing and have their costs reducing like their carbon columns are reducing. And if I can do that for a heck of a ton of companies over the next couple of years, I'm going to be real happy.
That's amazing. Bertrand, from you, how do we motivate our colleagues?
Yeah, I found it interesting because Jesper's question was, how can we act? Right. How can we go from words to action? And you found it not inspiring.
No, I don't.
No. You found it not inspiring when I said that we have to understand the vision of the world of our opponents. But I don't know if it's inspiring or not. But it's practical, it's useful, it's mandatory, and as long as we don't understand the vision of the world and the language of the opponents, we will never be able to change them. Before I've been an explorer, I was a psychiatrist and a psychotherapist. And what I learned is that to motivate someone, you have to speak his language. You have to show him or her as patient how important it is to change. For him or for her, not for me, not for the therapist. You have to give the hope to change. You have to give the wish to change. You have to give the resources to change. So when today we have people destroying the world, we have to show them that it's in their advantage to change. Solutions exist. That's like a medication. You know, solutions, technical solutions. At the end, they will be richer than they are now. So it's their advantage. What we need is to reach the goal, to save humankind, to save quality of life, to stop climate change. But we will never do it with wishful thinking. We'll do it by showing to our opponents that it is in their advantage to do it. And I think this is more important than inspiration, because it's action and it will change the reality of today that is unacceptable. Today it's unacceptable what happens. So we need to change it in a way or another. That's one way to do it.
Thank you, Bertrand. Thank you. Thank you for that. And that was incredibly motivating. And I think from my side, you know, it was a little bit hard for me to digest, because I would say the following. For me, it felt too soon. But I want to recall what Jesper said, which is that we're out of time. And so I think that we have to remember that. And with that, Jesper, would you please join us to send us all off to go and act and to accelerate our actions?
I will be super brief. I thought this was so interesting, except my own part. I think that this was absolutely so interesting. And I think maybe also the examples, your leadership, but also I think you helped us find the pathway to the new narrative. Because if we are against business and growth and those people out there, we know what's going to happen. So thank you all for this incredible inspiration. It's only action that matters. You can't leave unless you have applied to whatever good example you have. But there will be coffee if you don't know what example to leave. No. I wish you a fantastic week. Let's bring this narrative and this optimism to people in Davos and the world. Thank you so much. And I want a selfie with you on the stage. Thank you.
Please, please, please.
Yes, I'll send you an email right now. Okay.